Hi, welcome to Cuppa Creativity in the Literary Lounge, a place where writing doesn't have to suck. I am your host, Kynda Faythe, and today I'm here with Abigail Shepherd, the author of Finding Light. We are going to be discussing her latest work, her writing process, and possibly sharing some tips for aspiring authors. But before I continue, I do want to give out a couple of shout-outs. The first one is to the Wichita Advanced Learning Library. That is 711 West 2nd Street in Wichita. I would like to shout out to Prairie Market and Deli. They are in 601 North Main Street in Newton. They were amazing helping us organize a fundraiser. Third, we have Norm's Coffee Bar, also in Newton on Main Street, where we actually host our P&P Writing Society. It's every first and third Saturday from noon to 3, in case everybody wants to show up. And then finally, I want to do my pitch about, of course, FaythePublishing.org. So my passion project, we have the Writing Society. We can edit, we can proofread, we can help organize your writing, and we're hoping to have some workshops come up in the future. So be sure that you stay with us for that. But you know what the next time is. It's time for our mantra. And so this time, instead of me saying it, I recorded my 6th hour English 2 class, and I think that they said this with tons and tons of enthusiasm. So without further ado, daily mantra is, today we'll face fear, today we'll be brave, today we'll struggle, today we'll grow, today we'll do this, huzzah! Daily mantra. Huzzah! It is huzzah. All right, listeners, let's move on. All right, let's get down to business. Abigail?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yay! Abigail Shepherd, you are a senior at Newton High School, and tell us a little bit about what you've done.
As far as like writing experience?
Sure.
Okay. I've been in Miss Faythe's creative writing classes multiple years, so I've had some of my poetry published in class anthologies. And then last year, I got the idea in my head that maybe I could write my own book based on an imaginary character that I made up on a family camping trip years and years and years ago. And I kind of just never forgot about him. So, I just took that and ran with it and asked Miss Faythe, hey, you publish books. Could you help me publish mine? Because I'd like to. Originally, it was just going to be, I'll just make a few copies and then give it to my parents for their Christmas present. But then she said, well, what if we just publish it and put it on Amazon and then anyone can get it?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So that's what we did, and it snowballed.
How long did it take us to get this together?
Almost exactly a year, actually, because I remember the very first time it started was I couldn't fall asleep, and I've always had this thing where when I can't fall asleep, I tell myself stories. So I was telling myself a story about this imaginary character, and I thought, what if I recorded this? Almost like a podcast. What if I recorded this and then wrote it down tomorrow morning so I don't forget? So I did that, and then I thought, well, wait, this could actually be a story. So from recording that video, that was in mid to late December. I think it was the 20th when I recorded that video. And then, started writing it in creative writing class that semester. Worked on it over the summer. Started formatting and getting it all put together in September, and then we had it live on Amazon by November.
Yeah.
Got our very first hardcover copy came in December 24th, which I wanted it by Christmas, and it was anxiety-inducing, but it came in just in time, and that was wonderful.
And did your family know anything about this?
They did not. It was the hardest secret I have ever kept. I don't keep secrets from my family. It's almost impossible to. They know me too well. But I managed to keep this big of a secret for a full year, and it was the toughest thing I've ever done.
It was a process.
It was so difficult. I almost slipped so many times.
Oh my gosh, you're telling me. So tell us a little bit about the book.
It is, like I said, about an imaginary character. His name is Bonch Gabuski, and he was born on a nice warm summer evening in the middle of nowhere. I don't remember where we were, but we were on a family camping trip, and we were telling stories around the campfire, and my turn came up, and I thought, oh, sure, I'll tell a story. And I came up with this elaborate story about this boy who went on such strange adventures, and I just talked and talked and talked for so long, and I don't remember pretty much any of that original story, but my parents say it was incredible, and my dad loved it, and he kept nagging me to tell more about this kid, and I was like, no, I don't have anything, sorry, I just can't come up with anything. And that happened while I was working on the book, when he would ask, oh, you should tell us more about Bonch Kabuski. I was like, oh, I don't have any ideas, sorry, while I was working on a book. So that was a fun little secret to keep, of kind of like, ooh, just you wait. But yeah, it kind of just, he became my comfort character, and I never really had an imaginary friend, but I guess in the definition of the term, he was my imaginary friend for a little bit, because struggling with mental health, going through, middle school years, and just multiple struggles in my life, I kept turning back to this character, and I would make up all these stories for him, and it would usually mirror my own life and what was going on, but I would twist it and make it so that he was always the hero of whatever was happening in my own life, because I made it so that he was me, but he was successful in everything he tried, and he always saved the day, and that became my comfort.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you want to read a little?
Yes.
Yay.
So I will read the first, paragraph almost.
Okay.
Chapter 1, Arrogance. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Bonch Kabuski, but that's really hard to write out all the time, so we'll call him Boo. While his mousy brown hair and scrawny build gave him an ordinary appearance, people thought he was strange because his behavior was far from ordinary. He liked to keep to himself, talked to the trees, danced with the rain, and played with the wind. Boo didn't keep his distance from people. People kept their distance from him. He wouldn't have minded a friend, but no one seemed to want to volunteer for the job. Boo had an idea, though. And you have to read the rest to find out what that idea is.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the process. So you were in one of my creative writing classes, and so my listeners, just to let you know how psycho bonkers crazy I get, the first quarter we always focus on poetry and word choice and phrases and such, and then by contest writing, and then by the second quarter we're focusing more on storytelling. And I usually have students they have to have a couple pieces ready for contest too. And I remember you were so stressed out. You were so stressed out because this wasn't done. And I'm like, don't rush it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So talk about how you put things together. Like, we would have brainstorming sessions. We would draw all over the whiteboard. We would brainstorm. You throw pillows. We'd rearrange pillows. Talk a little bit about your creative writing process.
I think I'd like to start by just putting a disclaimer out there. If you are writing anything, poetry, magazine article, a short story, a long story, a series, whatever you're writing, a TV script, any kind of writing, don't put a timeline on yourself, because it'll stress you out. I tried to put a timeline on myself. I kept trying to make my deadlines, and which, there were no deadlines. I would just set them myself and be like, I need to have this done by this time or it all is going to fall apart. Nothing fell apart. Everything worked out. I got it all done with major help from Miss Faythe. Couldn't have done it without her. So just don't do deadlines. I don't work well with deadlines. And that, that could also be a personal thing. But the whole process was, I had no idea what I was doing. I don't think either of us really did.
It's a journey.
It was very much a futz around and find out kind of experience. I used a lot of the whiteboard in Miss Faythe's classroom. I had an entire notebook of scribbles, and I used slideshow presentations that had picture collages. I had story arcs. I had flow charts. I had pyramids drawn. I had random paragraphs. I had all sorts of things, scraps of paper from who knows where glued in there. And it was very much all over the place. Where was I going with this?
Oh, your creative writing process.
Okay, yeah. I work in scribbles, but I don't know.
So it's okay. That's okay. So with your scribbles, when do you find time to write?
Oh, gosh.
Because you had to be really secretive. So not only did you write this story, you also did all the illustrations, and both you and I had to keep our mouth shut about this book.
Yes.
Right? So we had to be really, really sneaky about when you were going to write things or when we would meet up to talk about character development or,
What ended up happening was for most of the year, I think, I would ask my parents, hey, can I stay late after school? I'm working on creative writing homework with Miss Faythe. So I wasn't technically lying. I was very careful because there's that saying of like, if you're going to tell a lie, make it as truthful as possible.
There you go. Yeah.
So most days, that was usually my writing time. And sometimes I wouldn't even write. I would just be rambling about who knows what. Sometimes I'd be scribbling. Sometimes I'd just be laying on the floor staring at the wall. But it was just a lot of after school time in the classroom, just trying to come up with something. Some of it I did do at home, but I had to be careful with that because when I start writing, I'll just get into this headspace where I forget everything around me. And I had to be careful of that because I had to be aware of where my parents were all the time. And there were a few moments when it almost fell to pieces. I was writing a lot on my personal laptop, and I would leave my tabs open when I closed my laptop because I was just, no one else is going to be on it. There was one time when my mom was like, oh, can I borrow your laptop? Yeah, sure. And then I realized I had those tabs open. And I called my older sister in a panic because she was involved. She was borrowing it too. And I said, Elizabeth, you know my password. You have to log in and close out all my tabs before Mom gets to the computer. She's like, okay, I got it. Because she was one of the only people that knew about it. So there was that. And then there was one time I was working on one of the illustrations at the kitchen table because I was home alone. And then my dad came home too soon, and he walked into the kitchen, and he was like, oh, what are you painting? Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
Carry on.
I'm just
you see?
doodling.
That's awesome.
So there were a few slip-ups, but it was mostly spurts of writing after school, in the middle of class sometimes if there was breaks between lessons. Middle of the night, I did a lot of late-night writing because that's when it was quietest and easiest to not be interrupted because everyone's asleep.
Yeah.
So I think those were my major times.
I know. I know. For me, like I am a shotgun approach, right? If you already know, my classroom and workspace is all over the place, just like my brain. And if I'm thinking of something, I write it down. I'll put it on my phone. I will email it to myself. I will do such and such. And so yeah, like when I wrote my first book, I did it all via sticky note. Like I had like a 15-minute break in the morning. I had a 15-minute break in the afternoon. I tried to squeeze in something during lunch. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I had notes everywhere.
What is? I'm going down my list here. Actually, what's the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself when you finished this?
I learned that I'm actually capable of doing something like this. Before I got into the process, it was just an idea of, oh yeah, I like to tell stories, and someday I might write them down somewhere and just keep them to myself, but it never crossed my mind that I could publish something and share something with everyone else. And that was something that I learned I can do that, and even if I don't think it's good enough or I don't think I'm brave enough, I have it in me to commit to something and put it out there anyway and get into that mentality of, oh, but what about this? But what about this? And make excuses for things. But I still have that power in me to say, I don't care, do it anyway. Whatever the excuse is, doesn't matter, do it anyway. Just do it.
Yeah.
Nike.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
And I'm not athletic, so.
So out of that, when you kind of probably gain some confidence. What do you think is like the best part about being a writer? Because writer gets and I know writing gets a bad rap.
It's difficult. It is. The spurts of inspiration, because there would be times when I would get so inspired and I'd write for hours on end, and then I'd put it down and I wouldn't touch it for like 2 months. That happened over the summer.
Yeah.
When all I worked on was the illustrations because I just couldn't write. I couldn't think of anything. And it is difficult, but I think the best part is knowing that you are leaving trails of yourself all over the world, and so many people can access that. And they don't even have to know you, and they might not get it. It's just knowing that you have left Easter eggs of yourself in life.
Right.
And I did that a lot in my book, and some people might not get it. Like, some of my characters, one of the main characters, Tallulah, is based on my mother.
Right.
And that was so hard to keep that a secret from her. Because I kept wanting to ask her,
Yeah.
like, oh, Mom, what do you think of this? Or what do you think she would say in this situation? So there's that. And, you know, one of the other characters is based on my cousin. And, you know, there's bits of me in every single one of them. And not even characters, too. There's, like, in Tallulah's house, I described a couch that I had growing up. It was
Right.
my childhood couch.
Right. Right.
Or, you know, certain smells that I always loved as a kid, or places that I would go, or memories that I have. It's just knowing that I can leave parts of myself for other people to experience, and maybe someone else will get it.
Yeah. So do you think you're going to write another one? Hint, hint. Or how about this? How about I rephrase it? How about, like, what do you think is going to be your next writing challenge? Maybe that would be a little easier.
Well, I thought I was going to do another big story, and I started about 3. Multiple ideas, multiple brainstorming sessions. I started about 3 books. I can't get anywhere with them, so I'm going to try something new. I submitted this in a school assignment. I don't know if you saw it yet. I want to try writing a book of poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I have plenty of poetry.
Right.
I just want to compile them all together, get them in one place, and try that. Because, yeah, I've written poems, but it's never been a collection of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that'd be really neat to try that, because I can tell multiple stories through like 20 lines.
Yeah.
Because you don't
exactly.
need a lot to tell a story. I
yeah,
could do it
I would
in
agree.
5 words if I really tried.
Yes. There's like, what is it, the 6-word story?
Yeah.
Those are so hard.
Those
Oh my
some
gosh.
of them
I think.
are creepy.
Yeah.
I read one that was like, it was like one of those limited word stories, and it's
Right.
like a pair of baby shoes that
Yes.
have
Never
You've
been
seen
worn.
it?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man,
that just
that hits you.
that one I always want more.
Mhm.
Right. I'm really greedy. When I
Oh,
see
yeah.
that, I'm like, I need more than just 6 words. You can't just leave me hanging. Right.
No, but I think that's even more fun, because then what if someone else builds off of it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is super. What kind of tips do you have? I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit.
Again, don't set deadlines for yourself, unless you're an actual professional. It couldn't be me. But, you know, try not to set deadlines for yourself. Give yourself some grace, especially if it's your first round. Even if it's not your first round. If you have written, like, 50 books, still give yourself some grace.
Mm-hmm.
You need patience to be a writer, because it's not going to get done in one day.
Preach.
You can't build a mountain in a day. And, you know, sometimes it's just not going to work. Sometimes you think, oh, I have this great idea, it's going to be so wonderful, and it just won't work on paper. It just won't fit together, and that's okay. Because maybe something else is going to work way better that is going to just hit the jackpot. It's going to be so much better. And so it's okay that not all your ideas are going to work, because others are really going to work, and it's going to feel even better. It's like a bonus. Like, ooh, that one worked way better.
Talk about, we've said it's a process. Talk about, like, editing.
Oh, man.
So you listeners, by the way, Abigail is the one who named my editor voice Janice.
Yes, it's a whole persona.
It is a complete, yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you completely. So how does that work? Or like maybe like we could talk about that, and then maybe also bring up like what was the most frustrating parts. And
I struggled with verb tenses
a
lot.
Verb tenses are not sexy or exciting.
No,
but they're
not.
so needed. So needed.
Editing isn't exciting, and well, okay, sometimes it can be, because you realize something that, oh, I messed up there, but wait, I can make it so much better.
Right.
So there are good bits. Overall, it's gonna be, what's the word? Not strenuous. Tedious.
It can be.
It can be tedious. Depending on what you're writing, it could be a really long process. But it's, oh my gosh, words are failing.
I know. It's a day. It's okay. It's okay. So outside of verb tenses, what do you think is like the biggest challenge?
Being patient.
Being patient, yeah.
Trusting
the process.
That you'll know when it's done, because there were, I don't know, I can't remember if you used this in a previous episode. Writing a book is like having a baby.
It is like having a baby.
Because you're gonna it's going to come to you and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. It's going to be wonderful. You go through the process and you think, yay, it's coming. Braxton Hicks contractions.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You're going to have that one editing. You're going to think, yes, it's done. It's happening. Get excited, people. Nope, it's not. Womp womp. We have to.
I'm like, I didn't know I missed the GER word right there.
Yep, you're going to read through it so many times that you're going to get sick of your own work. But that's okay. That's why we need peer review.
Yep.
Because then someone else can get sick of your work.
Yes.
You're going to read through it, and every single time, or it's going to feel like every time, you're going to find something new of how did I miss that? It's because you're going to go blind to your own mistakes.
Forest in the trees kind of thing.
Yeah, because you know what you were writing.
Yeah.
So your brain's going to correct it to be that, but it might not. Like you might have misspelled something, and it's just been there the whole time, and you don't know it. Hello.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that you've grown as a writer going through this process?
I'd like to think I have. I've definitely... I learned how to use verb tenses. I got way better at correcting that as I went. But I think I learned how to write not depressing. I don't know how else to phrase it, but when I first started writing, it was really depressing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my poetry was really dark.
I would say there are a lot of peers or even just younger people or people that, I can't write because I'm only depressed, or I can't write because I'm feeling happy. Or, if I write this one book or if I write this one poem, that's going to define me. And that's not necessarily, it's a scary leap, but
you
I don't.
aren't what you write. If I write a poem about, and I have done this, I wrote a poem about a really low point in my life, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm writing this on my school Chromebook. The school's going to flag me. They're going to trail me with therapists. I'm going to get sent to somewhere. You aren't what you write. Just because you write about a specific moment in your life when you felt a certain way or you thought something really oddly specific, that doesn't mean that's how you are all the time.
Right.
Because you can't be.
I would agree.
You can't put yourself in a box like that.
Okay. I've got some bonus questions.
Oh, gosh.
I know. Oh, it'll be good. These are super hard for me to answer.
Oh, I just saw the first one.
Do you have a favorite book, or can you name like your top 5?
I actually love talking about this because it depends on the season, right?
Okay.
If it is summer, I love Gone with the Wind.
Oh, yeah.
And The Outsiders.
Oh, I love The Outsiders.
If it is winter, I love Little Women.
It's a whole thing. This is great.
It's a whole thing. I do this with music too. It depends on my mood. It depends on the weather.
No, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I love classics. Like I said, Gone with the Wind, The Outsiders, Little Women, the Harry Potter series, the Chronicles of Narnia, the Little House on the Prairie series, and I love that one because my mom read it to me and my siblings growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful. But I cannot say that I have an ultimate favorite because
that's a hard question
you
to
gotta ask me like every hour and it'll be different.
Yeah, and we haven't read them all.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I know.
know.
Currently, my favorite is A Fall of Marigolds. I forget the author, but that was such a good book. That was a really good one.
Okay, so here's my other bonus one. Are you ready? It's the dinner question. If you could have a dinner with any writer, living or dead, who would it be? I know. I think these are hard. I think that these are really, really hard.
My answer would change hour to hour, and right now it's going to sound like such a basic cliche answer, but it's the truth. I would love to have a coffee chat with Charles Dickens, because hear me out, right?
Okay.
Hear me out. I know it's cliche. He wrote, I think it was Oliver Twist. Wonderful book, super famous, popular guy, and then he just flopped.
Yeah.
He wrote like 3 or 4 books and they all flopped. He just couldn't get back into the groove. And out of that slump of frantically trying to meet a deadline and needing something to write about, that's how we received A Christmas Carol.
Right.
And I would love to talk with him about how that felt because I'm in a slump right now.
It will not last long. It will not last long.
I'm sure it won't. But I would just love to know what that was like because I'm sure it was incredible, but also so difficult. And I want to know what it was like for him specifically.
Well, I think he also, I know that he did a couple of things. So like I know like Great Expectations is one of my favorite novels from him. And he wrote it in episodes. And so he would only release it like 2 chapters at a time. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good.
Original
I'm like, that's
TV
pretty,
series.
that's exactly right. And so I'm like, you could buy yourself some time. If you don't know
yeah.
what's going to happen in chapter 3, I'm just going to like upload this one.
I totally have something planned. I'm just saving it. I don't have something planned, and I'm procrastinating.
Exactly. Oops. Okay. Blah. All right. Here is my food for thought. That's my nice little my segue, right? For our listeners, why should they be writing?
Because it's liberating. Writing is leaving gifts of yourself for other people to read and experience and maybe relate to. And Miss Faythe has said this in class before, there's nothing more rebellious than reading and learning.
Yes.
And writing is almost a form of that. You're learning how to communicate your thoughts in a different format other than talking. And you're sharing that with other people, and other people will be rebellious by reading it.
Exactly.
And it's so freeing to get that, whatever that is, out onto paper and see it just all splayed out on a piece of paper and say, that is my thoughts, that is part of me, and now it's over there, and I can share it with other people, and it won't stress me out as much. That happened with me. And that might not be with everything you write, but it all circles back to the freeing feeling of knowing that I created something and I can share it with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people might really like it. You never know.
You never know. Yeah, you are the expert in you. Like, I don't know what is in that brilliant brain of yours unless you tell a story, right?
Yeah.
So, listeners, I will conclude with that. Your food for thought is write, because writing does not have to suck. Writing does not have to represent everything that you are at one particular moment, and you get to share yourself with the world. So without further ado, cheers to you, and happy writing.